Words from last Sunday's Gospel. Peter answered him, "You are the Messiah." So who is Jesus? It's a question no one can avoid. Who is Jesus? It's the question that lies behind the whole of the New Testament. In today's Gospel, the question is answered, and it was answered at a place called Caesarea Philippi. Strange name. Why? Because from the time of King Herod the Great, there had been a temple there where the Roman emperor was worshipped. Herod the Great built a temple to the Roman emperor Caesar Augustus here, and Herod's son, the tetrarch Philip, rebuilt the town and renamed it Caesarea after his patron, another Caesar, the Emperor Tiberius, and Philippi after himself. So Caesar's city of Philip, Caesarea Philippi, a place with a new name. But rather than all those assorted Herods and Caesars, the place is now remembered above all because mankind's true king was first confessed there by human lips. The original name of the place, Panias, refers to the worship of the god Pan, which took place in niches and grottos in the hill face from where the River Jordan takes its rise. But where people worshipped Pan, the god whom ancient shepherds worshipped, mankind's true shepherd was first recognized. And it was also a place where the worship of the gods of the ancient Semitic religions, the Baals, the fertility and nature gods, were worshipped from ancient times. So here, where cultures and religions met, Peter confessed Jesus as the Messiah. Jesus lets the truth about himself be known. But as with the miracles, he charges those who know with secrecy. He fears misunderstanding. For Messiah is not a title to be lightly bandied about. So how does it work out? First, the opinions of others are canvassed. Generally, we're told, people thought of Jesus as a prophet, or even one of the ancient prophets. But with Peter's words, we learn that Jesus is unique. He's not one of anything. He is, as we say today, one of a kind. He's the one and only, the only one. He is the Messiah. Or to say the same thing in Greek, the Christ. The expression is a title, not a name. The Messiah or Christ refers to someone whom the Jews were expecting, a king who would save them. And it must have been a surprising declaration on Peter's part, because Jesus had not been behaving as the Messiah was expected to behave. And now Jesus has an even bigger surprise in store for Peter. The Messiah is going to be put to death. But first of all, we need to get a few things straight, like what does Messiah mean anyway? It's simply a Hebrew word meaning someone anointed with oil. In the Old Testament, kings were anointed with oil at their inauguration. It's something that still happens with the coronation of British monarchs. So to say that Jesus is Messiah means that he's a king, a kind of king, a royal person. The Jews at the time of Jesus had arrived at a number of beliefs and expectations about what the Messiah would be like. Jesus, as a Messiah, fulfilled some of these beliefs about what the Messiah would be like, but others he didn't fulfill. The Jews believed that God would send the Messiah. They believed that he would be a descendant of King David and that he would be opposed by other nations but would overcome them, probably by force. And finally, that he would free Israel from foreign oppression and that Jerusalem would be rebuilt and that the chosen people would live there as a community. So, what about Jesus? He was sent by God, but he was more than a messenger. He was himself God incarnate. He did belong to David's royal family, but unlike David, he did not use force. He did his work by suffering and dying. He did obtain freedom for others, but he obtained for them freedom from sin rather than freedom from a foreign enemy. He did found a community, but this was not at Jerusalem. His community was the church of all believers. He did establish a kingdom, but a kingdom of justice, righteousness, and peace. So in some ways, Jesus was like the sort of Messiah the Jews were expecting. This is why Peter could say, "You are the Messiah." But there were ways in which he was very much unlike the Messiah who was expected. What this should tell us is that Jesus cannot be contained within our human categories of thought. He is unique. His uniqueness is revealed above all when Jesus, to the dismay of Peter, speaks of his coming rejection by the powerful people in the capital city, followed by his death. In other words, Jesus is saying that we cannot always expect the approval of those in positions of power. We do like to think we can get what we want for the church or for the gospel or for the kingdom of God by clinging on to the coattails of those with power in this world. But Jesus is saying this isn't so. Jesus points to a different way, the way of quiet self-giving, suffering, personal witness. We find this difficult to accept, just as Peter did, because the trouble is, we do not always think in the way that God thinks. The one thing in particular that we are unwilling to accept is that people can only be saved by those willing to suffer for them. People can only be helped by those who are willing to put their own comfort, their own prestige, even their own lives on the line. This is the way that Jesus, the true Christ, shows. So the one thing that we need to hold on here to is the necessity of the Messiah's suffering and death. If Jesus is the true Messiah, he will have to die. This is the only way his work is going to be achieved. In addition, what Jesus appears to be saying in this justly famous passage is that only by following him will we truly discover who he is. This is what Jesus was trying to get across to Peter. We have to follow Christ's way, which will often lead to misunderstanding or rejection or worse. But that's the way we're going to understand who he is. So Jesus is quite different from Pan, Baal, or the Roman emperor, who were all worshipped at Caesarea Philippi. Unlike them, he will achieve his purpose by suffering and dying, before he is vindicated and raised by God. Knowing that, can Jesus be the Messiah or the Christ for us? Or do we hanker after a more congenial option? Someone easier to follow. But if Jesus is not the Christ for us, who is? So the question we started out with has to be remodelled. It is now, who is the Christ for you? We have to ask ourselves, To whom do we give the highest honour and worship? Whom do we follow? Is it Peter's Christ, a Christ he hoped would throw out and overcome foreign nations and let his country rule over other nations? Is it Baal, the god of nature and well-being, the god of plenty and prosperity? Is it Pan, the god of fun and revelry, or the awe that overcomes us in secluded places? Associated by Kenneth Graham in chapter 7 of The Wind in the Willows with Pan. For some of the Victorians, Pan became associated with the numinous atmosphere of the English countryside. Or is your God power, authority, and the status quo? Do you worship those with power, those with authority or prestige, like people worshipped the Roman emperor? But if Jesus is your Christ, you will put all these behind you, and you will take up your cross and follow the Galilean. He died for all nations, and he asks us not to revel in plenty, but to give up our possessions. As for nature, he stilled the storms of nature. His conviviality is the Last Supper, and his throne is the cross. Is this your Christ? Or are you looking for another?